We are in the middle of some economic times that are uncertain, at the very least. The last 2 years, we have seen just a whirlwind in the economy, from real estate booms to some of you guys are like, I don't know how I'm going to rent a place if my rent runs out, because rent has skyrocketed by 70+%. Being in the real estate market on the side and the business side of what Julie and I have on the side, it's been a wild 2 years, and now interest rates are climbing, inflation is through the roof, and there's political agendas, there's financial questions, gas prices, come on somebody, and there's just lots of questions about the financial situation. How should we respond? Here's what I know: many times as believers, we don't always respond in the right way. We wonder, are we entering a recession? Can I just give you let me give you just a little clarity on what a recession is. You understand recessions are only things that wealthy countries even talk about. Majority of our world is in poverty. They're not talking about a recession. They live in poverty, extreme poverty. So a recession is an Americanized mindset, which means, oh gosh, you're going to take away my luxuries for a season. And we panic. We say things on social media, we blast people, we get all up in arms, and because we have a lot of questions. So I thought, because you guys like to do tweets and you like to laugh at tweets, I'm going to preach you a message here in a little bit, but I thought I could make some friends before I make some enemies, and read you some tweets, make you laugh, okay? So here we go. These are tweets about money, all right, and finances. This guy says, money can't buy happiness, but I probably wouldn't cry as much in my Porsche as I do my station wagon. Daughter said to her dad, why is the moon following us around? The dad replies, I probably owe it money like everyone else on the planet. If you're a Christian, this is not for you, but this is super funny. And so you should not do this. I'm going to go ahead and preface this. Boss makes $1, I make a dime, so we're going to tweet on company time. Bad advice, all right? Don't do that. Just funny to me, okay? Here's my budget. Food, $200. Data, $150. Rent, $1,800. Coffee, $3,600. Utility, $150. Someone who is good at the economy, please help me budget this. My family is dying. Some of y'all are complaining and you spend way too much money on some luxury. Coffee. I like this one. Money aside, what do you need right now? Somebody replies, the money you just put aside. Age 15, someday I'm going to own a Ferrari. Age 20, maybe I'll get a BMW someday. Age 25, I just hope someone in a Mercedes hits me in a crosswalk. Just want to touch it. As a kid, I used to think $1,000 was a lot of money, but now that I'm adult, I think it's a tremendous amount of money. Whoever believes money doesn't buy happiness can deposit it in my bank account. Nick says that. This is one that I love. Where did all your money go? First of all, I eat a lot. Have you ever ran into money, like how much you spend at the grocery store? Come on. Or out to eat, do that. You'll have a panic attack. This is my favorite, and it's going to pave the way for what I want to say today. I met a girl crying outside a mall. I asked her what's wrong, and she said she lost $200 at the mall. So I gave her $40 from the $200 that I picked up at the entrance. When God blesses you, you must bless others. That's hilarious until I flip the script on you and say, some of y'all treat God that way. I'm done. I can just leave now, can't I? You're like, I give so much. And God said, no, you don't. I gave you all that you have. It ain't yours anyway. And we got people in church that say they love Jesus, but are scared to death to be generous. And in times like this, they freak out. And so let's jump into Psalm chapter 49. We're going to read the whole psalm from the Message version today. If you want to flip there, you can follow along on the screen or follow along in your NIV or ESV, whatever you have. But Psalms is a group of songs that are teaching us to worship God or praise God in all seasons of life. There's different authors of the Psalms. David is one of the main authors. But this psalm we're talking about today is a psalm from the sons of Korah. The sons of Korah were Levites, and the Levites were the sons of Jacob, who in the lineage, Levi's lineage, they would serve in the temple courts. They were spiritual leaders of their day. And ultimately, by the time David comes in as the king of the nation of Israel, it seems that they are serving in the musical aspect of the temple. And they are writing songs or psalms, and they are not only writing songs to sing, but they're prophetic in voice. They're preaching through their songs. And so this particular psalm is a wisdom psalm that gives instruction that, if heeded, will result in praise to God. So it's not just like worship God because of this. It's like when you do this, when you understand this, when this is a part of your life, you will worship, you will praise God. So these are not just poets, but they are preachers in their songs. They're not just speaking to Jews either, they're speaking to all of us. They're not just speaking to the rich, they're also speaking to the poor. They're speaking to the social elite and the down and out. Now let me just pause for a second. Poor and poverty many times is a mentality, not a state of actual living in our country. Now, there are lower levels of income, and yes, there are people in poverty, but I just need you to hear from a worldwide perspective. If you make above the poverty level in the United States of America, you're in the top 4% of the wealthiest people in the world. And it's easy to say, I can't even afford rent. That is true. That is a real circumstance of many people right now. But the reality is we actually have houses here. We don't have lean-to tents. We don't wonder how we're going to cover our head if a storm comes through. And there are people in extreme poverty in our country, but for the majority of us, we are wealthy by the world standards and maybe a little not as wealthy by American standards, okay? So here's what I want you to hear. The poor may think that trusting in riches only applies to the rich. This is what the psalmist is going to tell us. But the psalmist addresses poverty and wealth in the same sentence. And what he's trying to say is it doesn't matter how much money you have or how much money you don't have, that the poor can just be just as materialistic as the rich can. Because, write this down, materialism is a desire of the heart. It comes from within. It's a desire of the heart. And so if you're poor or you don't have much, it's called covetousness or jealousy or envy. We compare ourselves, they have more, we want more, and it's really our desire for more. It's not just about owning things is what he's trying to tell us. And so in verse 3 of chapter 49, he says that I'm going to give you wisdom and give you understanding. And this word wisdom in verse 3 in the Hebrew is literally translated as skill. Now, how many of you like to have a little more skill in budgeting your money? A little more skill in how you see numbers. Some of y'all are like, I don't do math. And for those that are gifted in math, it's easy. It's like, this is great. For those that aren't, you're like, this is painful. And he says, I'm going to give you a skill today that if you will leverage it, understand it, and apply it to your life, it will produce a beautiful life in God's sight. And it's about money. It's about materialism. It's about wealth. And so I want to read from the message. I want to read from the message because it kind of simplifies it into common language. And anytime I read from the message, which is a paraphrased version of the Bible, I always go back and compare it to the original text to make sure it's accurate, okay? And I feel like this is a great, just kind of modern day language for us to understand what the psalmist is saying. So we're going to read the whole chapter. It's not super long. He says this, listen, everyone. Listen, earth dwellers. That's me and you, right? Don't miss this. All you haves and have-nots. All together now, listen. Do you see what he's trying to say? Multiple times he says, every single person, no matter how much you have or don't have, listen. I set plain spoken wisdom before you, my heart-seasoned understandings of life. I fine-tune my ear to the sayings of the wise. I solve life's riddles with the help of a harp. He says, I'm going to give you wisdom in a song. I'm going to let you see some things, but I'm going to put it in language you can understand and you can sing, and then maybe it'll take root in your heart. He goes, so why should I fear in bad times, in uncertain times? Hemmed in by enemy malice, shoved around by bullies, meaned by the arrogant rich. He says, really? There's no such thing as self-rescue, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. The cost of rescue is beyond our means. Can we just hear, we really don't have a lot of control of our current economic situation. And no tweet, or no post or no social media is going to change that. And honestly, the world revolves around the plans of God, so no politician is going to change that. And so he goes on to say, and it even doesn't guarantee life forever or insurance against, I love this, the black hole, death. Anyone can see that the brightest and best are wiped out along with the fools and idiots. They leave all their prowess behind, move into their new home, the coffin. You're like, this is so worshipful today. Thank you, Pastor Carl. The cemetery becomes their permanent address, and to think they named counties after themselves. This is genius, because you know how many people just want to be remembered, their name to be remembered? If I could just get a road or a city or a plaque on a wall somewhere, or if I can just have that building named after me, if I had a road named after me, and for some of you it'd be the Boulevard of Broken Dreams, wouldn't it? Like you see, like people just there's nothing wrong with any of that. It's the heart, though. It's like they strive for significance of this world and have no significance in eternity. He says, we aren't immortal. We don't last long. Like our dogs, we age and weaken and die. This is so encouraging. Can we get on with this? This is what happens to those who live for the moment. Can I tell you we're just in a moment right now? This is an economic moment. And we're panicked. Who only look out for themselves? Death herds them like sheep straight to hell. They disappeared down the gullet of the grave. He says, when you become so focused on yourself that it's all about finances, materialism, riches, you have missed the point, and it'll lead you down dark roads in eternity. They waste away to nothing. Nothing but a marker in a cemetery. But me, God snatches me from the clutch of death. He reaches down and grabs me. What he's saying is, I've learned a different way. So don't be impressed with those who get rich and pile up fame and fortune. Now let me pause. I am not against wealth. I think you ought to save and store up for the future, but it's a matter of the heart. Are you generous along the way? What is really the heartbeat behind what you do? He says they can't take it with them. Fame and fortune all get left behind. Just when they think they've arrived and folks praise them because they've made good, they enter the family burial plot where they'll never see sunshine again. My good Lord, can you stop singing? Imagine us singing this song. Enter the burial plot with my family. It's like, what in the world? This is depressing. And he says, we aren't immortal. We don't last long. Life is but a vapor, here today, gone tomorrow. But in that life, we are so obsessed with riches, aren't we? We're so obsessed in America with material things. In fact, we love boasting about our riches, don't we? Look at my new car. Too bad you're in debt for $800 a month for it. We love making ourselves appear wealthier than we really are. And then when there's an economic downturn, we panic. When things get shaky and the housing market looks weird, or inflation increases or gas prices go up, and we wonder, well, it's because, let's be honest, we've stretched ourselves so thin. And we panic, and it's not really anybody's fault but ours, because we lived for the moment. And people are always trying to sell us stuff, right? Always trying to tell us how to make money. Y'all seen those ads on social media where if you just start an Amazon business, you can do this. Here's how I did it. Just subscribe to the link. Pay me $79 and I'll show you how to. Let me just tell you something. If your Amazon business is going so good that you got to take $79 from me to compete with you, then it ain't going real good. Why would you pay me? If you're making that much money, why you need my $79 to become your competitor? It's just we have all this stuff. Some of y'all are like, crap, I shouldn't have paid $79 for that. The real question is this is what the author and the psalmist are telling us here, is what is the source of your trust? Where does your trust come from? In things that you've put, I have faith, I have trust, I'm confident, I'm secure. All those words are interchangeable. In my bank account, in my wealth, and my riches. Or are you just so unaware that there's a bigger picture at play here? That the world doesn't revolve around 2020 or 2022 or economic crisis or 3 points on a new loan amount or whatever. Because what he's trying to tell us is those that have a lot often have nothing. because they can't take it with them. We die. What are we going to leave behind? Are we going to have an eternal impact or just earthly riches? Are we going to have a road named after us, but nobody really see we had a life of significance? Counties and cities named after us, but all we did was add value financially to this world, but not spiritually to this world? I love verse 12. I'm reading it in 3 different versions, the NIV, the ESV, and the Message. I just want you to see it. People, despite their wealth, do not endure. They are like the beasts that perish. Man in his pomp will not remain, the ESV says. He is like the beasts that perish. Psalm 49:12, we aren't immortal. This is from the Message. We don't last long like our dogs. We age and weaken and die. And then they repeat it again in verse 20. Like our dogs, we age and weaken and die. Do you think he's trying to tell us something? If we could just see how short this life is and understand this and realize that it's not about what you gain here on earth, but really what you give up, then we can live a life that worships God beyond all circumstances. So if we're not supposed to trust in riches, what are we supposed to do? Well, I want to flip to the New Testament. I'm going to give you 3 thoughts today from Luke chapter 12 because Jesus reiterates this. Luke chapter 12, he's going to tell a story about a rich man, a parable that has a spiritual meaning. And so there's a lot here. I'm going to read you a passage and give you a point, read you a passage, give you a point, and read you a passage and give you a point. That means there's 3 points. So we're budgeting our time. You'll know when we're done. Okay? Luke chapter number 12, beginning verse 15, he said to them, his followers, watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. You see this? Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. And he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. Let's just pause. This is a moment. This season in this man's life, the soil was right. The weather was right. The patterns were right. He's yielding an abundant harvest. He is blessed in this season is what it's saying. Let's be honest. Like I told you, if you are above the poverty level in America, you're in the 4% of the richest people in the world. We are a blessed nation, whether sometimes we see it or not. We are a blessed people financially. Then he goes on to say, this man thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. Let's pause. In other words, I have so much stuff, I got nowhere to put it. Let me just apply this to our lives. In America, we have cars. And we have houses for our cars called garages that end up parking our cars outside because we got so much junk in our house that we fill our garage. Y'all know those people? And now one of the greatest money-making schemes on the planet, and listen, if it goes far, doesn't matter the economic crisis, it stands in all economic crises in the history of the United States since it started, is storage units. Because you put it on an auto draw and you're too lazy to go get your stuff out of there. You just pay $110 a month. Because we got so much stuff, we can't store it. We don't know what to do with it. And then we're like, what are we going to do if the interest rates keep rising and gas keeps going? You see the dichotomy we live in. And this man has so much stuff, he doesn't know what to do with it. Can I just pause and say, you got storage wars now. People making money off stuff you don't even know you got. Let's go clean that out, sell some stuff, and give it away. But that's not what this man does. Then he said, this is what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I'll store my surplus grain. He didn't have a storage unit he could rent. And I'll say to myself, this is where it hits the fan. I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy. Eat, drink, and be merry. You see, if Jesus had taken life easy, he never would have left heaven. He came to earth and gave his life. We spend our whole life working till 65 years old and hope we live to 80 so we can enjoy 15 years of it. Storing up, living up so we can eat, drink, and be merry. And some of y'all, this is the problem. This is why it's so hard for people who are wealthy to be disciplined many times because they want to be on the lake, on the boat. Or cruising around or doing what they want to do. It's so hard to stay focused because it's so easy to take it easy. The Christian life was never meant to be easy. It's a dying to yourself, taking up your cross and following Jesus, laying down your life. And listen to what Jesus says. Jesus said, "But God said to him, 'You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you.'" You got all this stuff and you about to leave it behind. "Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself?" This is how it would be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich towards God. This is heavy, isn't it? We don't sing these songs in church. And Jesus said, you want to be rich? Richness comes in generosity, not in gathering things. So here's the first point. Number one, remember your source. That's what Jesus is telling us. You start up all this stuff, but watch this. Your life will be gone. And you got nothing because you don't know where your source comes from. What is the source of your trust? What is the object of your affection? What is it that you put your trust in? This is your source of life. This is the fact that you're here today because of the goodness of God. This is the source of your supply in life, whether it's food, drink, finances, whatever it is. This is the source of your breath. And if God never gave you anything else, if you're a follower of Jesus, it is the source of your salvation. Without God, we are headed for an eternity of eternal punishment, but God. And God doesn't owe us anything. But sometimes we think we deserve something. Why? Because oftentimes God's generosity towards us becomes our own entitlement. We think we deserve. God's been so good. See, God loves me. God can love you without filling your bank account. He can still love you in spite of what's going on. You know how I know He did? Because He gave His Son. We're never satisfied. We're always worried about what will happen if inflation continues, if gas prices keep going up, if our party isn't elected. We got all these anxieties about all this stuff, and we shift our focus away from our source onto other things, and we become codependent on government, on people, on elected officials, on whoever's making decisions, on our own bank account, on our own job, because our source is in the wrong place. Our focus is in the wrong place. And hear me, if you live like that, then maybe you've forgotten the source of life itself. And then Jesus said to His disciples, "Therefore, I tell you, do not worry about tomorrow. Do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body or what you'll wear. Just wear something." We don't care, just wear something. Our dress code at Relevant Church is, yes, just wear something. "For life is more important than food, and the body more important than clothes." And here's where it lands. "But seek first His kingdom, and these things will be given to you as well. Do not be afraid, little flock." You see what he's not talking down to us. He's just saying, remember how small you are in compared to your God. "For your Father has been pleased to give you" what? The kingdom. Not of this world. Not here. But if you'll stay and keep your trust and your eyes on the right thing and the source of everything in life, if you'll keep your focus on that, you'll know that one day, despite what happens on this earth, I get to inherit an eternal kingdom of my Father because I'm an adopted son or daughter of God. So here's the second point. Do not worry about tomorrow. You're like, "But I am." Okay? Let's start today shifting your focus. I'm not saying don't save. You ought to save. You ought to save 10% of what you have. You just ought to. At our Relevant Church, we every single year, minus 1 or 2 years of our history, we've put up anywhere from 5 to 15% of the annual revenue so that we can make sure we're planning for a rainy day like COVID. That's how we're able to build a building in the middle of COVID and not freak out when only a third of the people come back. Why? Because we've been faithful steward of what God has blessed us with. And your tithes and your offerings. I'm going to tell you something. If I carry anything and the stress of anything, it's being faithful in that. So it doesn't mean don't be wise. It means don't be selfish and don't be self-centered. Don't live in fear. Don't lie there in fear. Because the antidote to fear is faith. It says, without faith, it's impossible to please God. Well, you don't need faith if you know all the outcomes. I don't need faith to be generous if I know, God, I'm going to give you $1,000 if I know I'm going to get it back today. God, I'm going to serve you, and I'm going to take my family and move them to this location. I'm going to go to 100. I'm going to do whatever I need to do because I know the outcome. Listen, faith requires doubt. So if you have doubt today, it's a great opportunity to shift your focus and have faith. What is faith? Faith is believing that God is who he says he is and that he will do all that he's promised to do. That's faith. But God, I don't see you right now. But faith tells me you're still faithful. Faith tells me you'll never leave me, you'll never forsake me, but you'll fulfill your promises. Faith says, I don't see it right now, but I'm still going to believe it. The substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things, Hebrews tells us, not yet seen. If I can see it, I don't need faith to believe it. It's when I can't see it that my faith is stretched. So who is God? What does he promise to do? Well, if you doubt the promises of God or you've been waiting and you're like, well, when God? Let's just remember in Genesis 3, he promised Jesus would come and save us from our sin right after we screwed up. And it was thousands of years before he showed up. But he came and he lived and he died and he resurrected so that we could have new life because God is faithful to his promises. I don't know another human on the planet like that. Can I give you an honest moment? God's blessed us financially, and I have a business on the side. I've been dabbling in real estate since 2005. And just kind of understand real estate, grasp real estate, see opportunity, kind of know when to strike, and just God is it's been a great source of and resource for us. The last couple of years have been great for us financially. It's been amazing. You don't think when interest rates start climbing and the economy starts going, I'm like, crap. Because I got transactions happening in the middle of this. I'm like, well, I thought we could sell it for this, and we can't sell it for that. And the tendency, and I've heard people say, well, I'm losing money. No, you're not. Look at what God's blessed you with over the last 2 years. It's a moment in this, just because you can't sell it this week for it, you could sell it last week for it, don't mean you're losing money. I know people that have gained $300,000 and $400,000 and $500,000 this last year, or last 2 years, and all of a sudden they have to reduce their price by 50 and they think they're losing money. That's the wrong mentality. But we do that all the time as Christians. Well, God, why would you take this away from me, right? Well, look at all that you wouldn't have it if I didn't give it to you anyway. You said, but I earned it. Well, who gave you the ability to earn it? Let him take the breath out of your lungs and see how much you can do tomorrow. Remind you of how good and how, remember, Jesus said, listen, little flock, God's got this. While you're on this earth, it's temporary. And he goes on to say, this is my favorite part, sell your possessions and give to the poor. What? Where did this come from? Out of nowhere. He said, provide purses for yourself that will not wear out, a treasure in heaven that will not fail, where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. Here it is. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be. You know why I love my kids so much? Because they cost a lot of money. I got way too much invested in them not to care. No, I love them because they're my own, but you understand what I'm saying? You want to see where your treasure is, there your heart will be means. Why don't you go make a $5,000 investment in a stock? I don't do this. This is a illustration. Don't say your pastor told you. You go make a $5,000 investment into stock or into Bitcoin or into Shib Inu. If y'all don't know what that is, y'all aren't into crypto. And watch how many times you check it the next few days. Because where your treasure is, there your heart is drawn. This is why some people love the local church, because they're generous to the local church. And others jump from church to church to church to church because their treasure ain't there. This is why some people, when people give their heart and life to Jesus, man, they lose their mind because they know their treasure is there and it's making a difference. And others are like, why everybody so excited? They just got wet when they got baptized. I could do that in my swimming pool. It's because they recognize this person has said yes to Jesus. Now they're going public with their faith. They died to their old self. They've been made new in Jesus Christ, washed clean for eternity, and I got to be a part of that. So here's Jesus' message to you and me. While we're here on this earth, in the meantime, live generously. That's the psalmist, and that's Jesus. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be. In the middle of him saying, don't store up wealth, because you're going to die one day. Don't worry when times get tough. In the middle of that, Jesus says, by the way, sell some stuff and give to the poor. Do you know many of you would be in a better place financially if you had given more away? You know why? You said, well, how is that mathematically possible? I don't even know. I'm not even trying to manipulate numbers. What I am going to tell you is you have a lot more peace, though. Because when you give, what you're saying is, I know where my source is. And so when things go south, I still know where my source is. I have a greater peace. Less stress. Less stress. Less stress. You know why? Because you know you have eternal rewards. And in spite of what this world does to you, you got a Father in heaven that's going to say, you keep your focus on Him. He loves you unconditionally. And you keep your focus and you serve Him. He's going to look at you and say, welcome home. Come, enter your reward one day. So the antidote to greed is generosity. The thing that helps overcome greed is generosity. You know what Julie and I have decided to do in our life, and we've done this many a times, and anytime we start feeling anxious about money, or anxious in a downturn, or anxious in a season, we give. You know what it does? It does something like, God, this is weird. I watched my 401k, my Roth IRA, I watched my real estate. What are we going to do? We're going to shift our focus, and we're going to give, because we're not going to focus. It doesn't mean we're not going to be wise, and we're not going to be good stewards, but our focus is going to be on you. We're going to live generously in this moment, because what we're saying, God, is you are our source. I love what David Guzik says. I love studying his studylight.org is where I do a lot of study, and then Blue Letter Bible, just some of his commentary and enduring word and various things is his stuff. And it says, in general, God's answer to these things for the rich is to practice radical generosity. It's a way for them to declare their trust in the Lord and to guard against boasting in their riches. What he's saying is it's grace, not wealth, that enables a person to give generously. He's saying you might have a lot of money or you might not have a little bit of it, but really what we do is guard. It's grace, not wealth, that enables a person to give generously. It's when you understand how good God has been to you and the grace God has shown you, it doesn't matter how much money you have or don't have. It's the grace of God that says, I'm going to live open-handed. And so here's what I know. There's some people here or watching online, and you're anxious right now. Can you just ask God for grace, to know His grace, to experience His grace? Quit asking Him for more money. Help Him to recognize the grace of you, to recognize the grace of God. Lean into His presence. So we're going to sing a song in closing. And there's this line in this song that I love. It says, first of all, it just says, God, you're bigger than I thought you are. You're bigger than I've given you credit for. You're bigger than everything that I could ever imagine. You hold the whole world in your hands. I tell people all the time, the world revolves around the plans of God. But then there's this line that says, I stop all negotiations with the God of all creation, because you're bigger than I thought you were. You ever negotiated with God? God, I'll do this if you do this. God, I'll never do that again if you'll just rescue me. Y'all did that when y'all were like living in sin, right? I'll never go back to that. Just stop it and just realize He's a faithful God. You don't have to negotiate with Him. He's already given you more than you deserve and me more than I deserve. And so, God, I'm just going to worship you because you're bigger than I could ever fathom. In the good times and in the bad times, my trust and my faith is going to be in you. Would you stand with me? And I'm going to ask you to close your eyes just for a moment. Stay with me through the remainder of the song. and before you move. And just, if you're just going through a difficult anxiety, financial season, you just have doubts and fears, we do have a budgeting class on August 14th. You can go to myrelevant.cc and sign up for that. And we have one in September and October as well. But you would just say, Carl, I'm dealing with anxiety, worry, doubts, fears. I just have some financial instabilities or insecurities right now. Would you just lay your hands over your heart? Because this is a heart issue. It's not a checking account issue. And just lay your hand over your heart and lean into the God of the universe. I want to pray over you. Father, you see my brothers and sisters today. Whether they're in this room or they're at home, they're leaning into you saying, God, they need you to do a miracle in their spirit, not in their bank account. Because no matter what's in that checking account, it's what's in their heart that really matters. And I pray you would well up an overwhelming sense of generosity and love towards you that overflows to this world. And I pray as we sing this song, we realize how good you are. In Jesus' name.